go to Facebook. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My brothers and sisters, Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is an opportunity, inshallah ta'ala, today. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be talking to our brother Iqbal Nasim. He's the CEO of National Zakat Foundation. And inshallah ta'ala, today we'll be talking about Zakat, importance of Zakat, details of calculations, and so on, inshallah ta'ala. So we'd like everyone to be ready and benefit, inshallah ta'ala. Send my salam to brothers who already joined. And we're going to wait, inshallah ta'ala, a few more seconds before we start. How are you, brother Iqbal?
MashaAllah, I'm very well, thank you. Yes, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, good. How's Ramadan so far with the lockdown?
So going by fast, I'll tell you that.
Yes.
Subhanallah. Alhamdulillah. I don't think I've had time to think about lockdown.
Yeah. Yes, subhanallah. It's a different time, it's a different Ramadan, but still, alhamdulillah, I think we enjoyed it nevertheless, at least family and that aspect of it.
Obviously, from your perspective, it must be very different because of the whole mosque. It changes so much, right? In terms of the mosque.
It changes a lot because of the situation. I mean, it was all about the masjid and the people around, but subhanallah, very different. But at least time for family and alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are not going to wait for long, inshallah ta'ala. Brothers will be joining. Assalamu alaikum, brother Bashir, brother Samir, and all the brothers, inshallah ta'ala, will be joining. So brother Iqbal, maybe you can give us a bit of background about yourself first.
Sure. Not much to say. My name is Iqbal Nasim. I'm the Chief Executive of National Zakat Foundation.
Yeah.
I've been with the National Zakat Foundation since the end of 2011. So it's 8.5 years, I think, roughly 8.5 years. Alhamdulillah. And in that time, alhamdulillah, National Zakat Foundation has grown substantially. We collect and distribute around £3 to £3.5 million of zakat per annum. And at the current time, obviously, we're very busy because a lot of people have been getting in touch with National Zakat Foundation, saying that they need help and they're in difficulty. And so we have been busy, in Ramadan, and distributing the zakat of Muslims who are given zakat to those around the UK who are in difficulty.
MashaAllah, excellent, great. So why are we talking about zakat? What is the importance of zakat? If you give us a bit maybe of
sure,
so that we appreciate that
pillar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, look, so we know that zakat is a pillar of Islam, and it's one of the ways to consider its degree of importance is the fact that we know in the Quran that pretty much everywhere where zakat is mentioned, salah is also mentioned. Yeah, so salah and zakat typically come together in the Quran. So that in and of itself gives gives us an indication of the level of importance. We know how important salah is. Yeah, we know how important salah is, and zakah, the payment of zakah, the accurate payment of zakah, is also extremely important as an individual obligation. It is a pillar, and one of the worst of crimes is to have been neglectful with regards to one's payment of zakah. Why? Because it is the right of another believer, and because it also undermines our collective sort of endeavor as Muslims. Just as with the salah, it's extremely encouraged, and obviously I'm talking to someone from a mosque, so I don't need to emphasize it, that much. But just as with salah, it's extremely encouraged to be doing the salah in congregation together as much as possible. Even if you're not near a masjid or with a masjid, but if you can join others, do it together.
Yeah.
And similarly with zakah, there's very much this idea of togetherness. So one of the important things, and the reason why National Zakat Foundation, one of the key reasons why it exists, is to try to give a way for the zakah of Muslims in this country to be handled in a way that is done together, rather than each individual over here, each community over here deciding that we're going to give it over here, then we're going to give it over there, and we want to do this and we want to do that. That we bring some togetherness to the way in which we handle zakat. So it's a critically important point, not just from the perspective of paying,
Yeah.
but for also in terms of how the funds are used, where they're directed. So that's also a really important thing for us to think about from a top-down level, because it's a little bit like, so think about it like this. So zakah, we know it's an obligation, like we discussed. It's specifically calculated. You have to give it once every year. It goes to certain recipients, and we know that classically it used to be collected by the political authority. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a tax. Yeah, it's wealth tax, right? Now, in today's in today's day and age, when you think about taxes, when you think, okay, paying tax is one thing. That's you as an individual doing your duty. But how the money is used is also affects all of us, isn't it? Because it's about all of our interests are affected. So how the council decides to use the money for our interest is important, or the government or whatever. Similarly with zakah, the way in which money is used is important, and we need to consider what is it doing for Islam and Muslims, really.
Right.
You know, and that's something which is really important for us to think about when we think about zakat as well.
Excellent. I think zakat in the West, many people, I feel like they pay the zakat as their obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but maybe the aspect of the distribution of zakat and where zakat goes and how is it distributed, I don't think a lot of us are fully aware, especially in the West. Many people maybe think zakat is only to be sent to Muslim countries, taking into account obviously the situations and so on.
Yes.
But it's an opportunity maybe today to understand how zakat is also affecting or helping people in a country like UK, for example.
Sure. So look, first of all, there's a principle of this thing, yeah, and I do appreciate that it's not, if somebody's hearing or thinking about these things for the first time, it's not easy to necessarily understand clearly or immediately the importance of local zakat, given the situation that we see around the world. But you see, that's the problem. There's a starting point. The issue is the fact that we think about, first and foremost, we think about where our zakat should go in relation to where I think there are problems. Yeah. Already the way you're starting to think about that is already the problem in a way.
Itself,
because, first of all, you have there's certain principles. So just like with salah, right? There's various rules and there's various regulations around it, and there's various ways and things. There's certain overarching form, how salah happens. Within that, you can do more, you can do less, right? You have certain choices that you make. Okay. Yeah. But overarchingly, there is a certain form. And similarly with zakat, overarchingly, there's a certain form. And that form involves really three key things. Number one, which we already touched on, is the idea of togetherness. That zakat should be collected locally. Like, I would be perfectly happy if it was some other body or whatever it was, it doesn't matter. As long as each place, each area, or wherever there are Muslims on the planet, a Muslim should have somewhere where they are able to give their zakat, where they're giving it to either the political authority, or where that doesn't exist for as far as this is concerned, then to a zakat body. Meaning it's not just charity, then any charity here, any charity there, zakat should go. Rather, it should be given to a zakat body that's then making decisions on behalf of all of us, about how these funds are used to do things. So that's number one. The second thing is local. So the Prophet ﷺ, the way in which the companions afterwards organized zakat, the way in which scholars have written about zakat, I mean, pretty much everybody wrote about the fact that the prime responsibility of a payer is to prioritize the need and the zakat recipients within where they live. Now, the thing is that think about it like this. If we understand that zakah is a duty, and we have a certain obligation to pay it and for it to go to somebody who should receive it, then, and we say that the person is the right of the recipient to receive it, then if there is such a recipient in our midst in the UK, and I can tell you there are thousands of people that no scholar on earth would disagree that they are eligible to receive zakah, thousands of them, then if we decide to go and do this, that, and the other wherever around the world, it doesn't take away the responsibility to these people, you see. So this is another key thing. Do we think that Allah considers us to have an equal level of responsibility to every single poor person on the planet? No. Right? We're not equally accountable to every single person.
If you allow me, brother, but people might say, well, with the welfare system that we live in here, why would we put priority for someone living in a country like UK over someone maybe another poor country, Muslim country?
Yeah, no, I understand that. And the reason is as follows, is because number one, the fact that there is a welfare system, has not meant, that has not meant for literally millions of people in this country, for even outside of the Muslim community over the last few years, that hasn't meant that millions of people have had to go to food banks for food, that there are thousands of people homeless on the streets, that there are so many people, including in the Muslim community, and we see it regularly, and we've seen it recently, where Muslims are on the verge of suicide, in relation to their particular situations, and it's causing them mental health difficulties and problems, and therefore family breakup, right? You don't have to look far before you really understand that there are a lot of problems here in our community right here that stem from financial stresses and difficulties. And so the reality is, again, you see, our job is not to compare levels of poverty. You see, that's not reasonable for us to do, because even when we do it internationally, who is it that does this? Where is the index of need? And even if we did it that way, the logical thing to do would still be for us all to decide, well, okay, this year it's Syria, or this year is this place or that place, and then all of our money should go there. Then, right? If it's only about who are the most poor people on the planet.
True.
But the reality is that, you see, our responsibility is not equal. That in the eyes of Allah, our level of responsibility is not the same to every single person around the planet, right? Than it is to people who are in our midst, because this haqq does not go away, and that's the key thing, right? If there is a poor Muslim in London, for example, right, and the right of that person on Muslims in London does not go away just because Muslims in London decide to go and do other things. So we can go and do other things if we want, right? But we recommend that people do that with their sadaqah, with their voluntary charity, because Allah will take to account the people who have more levels of responsibility towards those in their environments. And subhanAllah, it is the case that in a lot of our what we call home countries, or where our parents were born, perhaps, or maybe some of us were born, whatever. At some stage, what we call our home country will probably change in our minds, or certainly for our children or grandchildren, right? Anyway, the point is that a lot of our home countries, they do actually have resources, they do have wealth, that they do have like the ability to organize themselves to make sure that the need of Muslims is met. I can't, certainly in the South Asian Muslim community, I can speak of, in terms of, say, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, whatever, right? Is there enough zakat in these countries for the poor people in these countries? 110%, yes, absolutely. Is there enough zakat in the Middle East for all of the problems in the Middle East? Of course, there's probably enough zakat in the Middle East for the world, 5 times over. So the fact that we are now, I understand the sentiment and the positive and noble sentiment that is behind the contributions that we make here, there, and everywhere around the world. But what we're forgetting is that we as a group of Muslims in this country, we have a certain responsibility to Islam and Muslims in this country that is our first level of accountability. And there are so many levels at which we are not prosperous in this country at the current time. There are a lot of difficulties, financial troubles, and that, relatively speaking to the wider society, that we are impoverished. And that's really important, because you might be better off relative to all these people around the world. But if in the community that you're living in, you have, relatively speaking, in difficulty, that you're on the margins of society from an economic standpoint, that affects Muslims, and it affects Islam and our future in this country as well. So we have to realize that our prime responsibility is here. And remember, look, we're only talking about 2.5% of your wealth on one day a year. So why can't we pull that together, invest it in our community and in the future of our community here, and then with all our other wealth, we can do whatever we like. But if we have if there's no level at which we have organized our funds, so for example, even in a local community gives funds to the masjid to organize the institution of the masjid, to provide certain services, right? And it sits there in such a way to provide the various types of services that it provides, for example, or an Islamic center, right? So similarly speaking, at a national level, right, there's a minimum level of funds that we need to pool from zakah, okay, which becomes the way in which we, like our collective membership fee. Sometimes I say zakah is like your membership fee for Club Islam. You're part of a community. And yes, we are part of a global community. Of course we are. But we live and breathe every day much more as part and parcel of a local communities where we actually experience our Islam and we live our lives, and we are subject, whether we like it or not, to various parameters of, you know, the country in which we live in and whatever else. Like, this is our reality, you know. So we've got to think about the way in which not relate zakat to everywhere else and like the past where my parents were born and all the rest of it. Think about the future and where the future is going.
MashaAllah, excellent. So just one more question about the effect of zakat in the country, in the UK. How do you see the role of zakat has been in the last, through your organizations, for example, or other platforms as well? How much was it affecting really lives of people in the UK, and how did it improve really and do a good job?
Sure. So look, it has a massive effect, and the key way it has an effect, the number one way in which it has an effect, is that it preserves the bonds between believers, okay, and therefore strengthens Islam as a result.
Right.
And you see, what we fail to realize sometimes is that when Muslims, like, for example, in April, literally in April last month, 3,000 Muslims around the country submitted an application to National Zakat Foundation for help. Okay.
3,000 people. That was last year?
No, last month.
Oh, last month. Just in a month.
In 1 month. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So that was a record month for us, obviously, with this COVID situation and everything else, right?
Of course, because of the situation.
So every 15 minutes, a Muslim is knocking on the door, not of NZF, but they're knocking on the door of other Muslims.
Yeah.
Right. Here, and they're saying, I need help. Okay. Yeah. So the point is that the true value is not simply the fact that, oh, this person now is eating, this family is able to afford some basic groceries now as a result, or this person has moved into a house, or this person has been able to get a job, or this person has been able to be of impact and service in their community as a result of the support. That's all good, but the real power is the fact that we didn't say no. Yeah. That there was a mechanism. There was someone, when somebody said, I need help, that the Muslims responded.
There's someone there to help them.
That means there is such a thing as a community, because frankly, if it's not for that, what community? It's all talk. It's all talk then, you know. As soon as someone needs anything, we can't do anything. What community then? And this is the point. In their minds and hearts, well, what kind of Islam is this then? What kind of system is this that doesn't even provide for the most needy or those who need it within the community? If we can't do that, that's what I'm saying. It undermines Islam when we don't do that, and it strengthens it when we do. Then it truly is a community. Like, if we can actually genuinely say that there is no Muslim in our community who, when they say I need help, that they don't get a positive response. Yeah, that's powerful, man. That's like very seriously powerful, isn't it? So absolutely. That really strengthens the izzah. It gives a certain dignity and honor and a good reputation as well, which is important to this community. So I think we mustn't undermine that. Whereas on the other hand, the faith of people and the reality of our Islam erodes when we don't have that mechanism. So that's been the real impact. But of course, thousands of people. We have 3 funds at the moment through which people can give zakah. So a hardship relief fund, which is about helping people meet their basic needs just for the next month to 6 weeks, for example. Housing fund, which is about helping people get secure, affordable accommodation, especially when people are in situations of homelessness and stuff. A work fund where we help people to gain sort of meaningful kind of employment where they can look after themselves and then hopefully even become zakat payers. And then an education fund, which is actually there specifically for imams, religious leaders, community, people running community organizations to support their learning and development, so they're able actually to be of service. So I'll give you an example. One is that we're funding at the moment, we're about to just launch, inshallah soon, a portion of our education fund for people who want to, people like imams and others, to be able to do counseling, kind of accredited counseling courses, for example.
Okay.
So that costs money, obviously, and something which sometimes would be difficult for somebody to afford. But if they're able to do that, obviously they'll be able to be of greater service, perhaps to the people, their congregations, and etc., etc. So that's an example of the kinds of things that we're doing. And alhamdulillah, each month now we are collecting and distributing in the region of around 300 to 350,000 pounds a month of zakat.
Excellent. So maybe now we can take us into more technical, practical stuff about zakat. I'm sure many people would like to listen to that as well.
Sure. Okay, so look, so we'll talk about zakat calculation. And I'll do a brief summary, and then if there's any specific questions, then you can, inshallah, we can.
Yeah, brothers and sisters, maybe they can put the questions, inshallah, and we'll pass them, inshallah, forward to you.
Sure. Yeah. So the first and most important thing is that you have a zakat anniversary. All right. That means that, you know, everybody should have a specific date in the Islamic or the lunar calendar, that this is their calculation date for zakat. So if you are someone who calculates zakat and pays in Ramadan, that's fine, but you should have a specific date in Ramadan. When in Ramadan are you calculating your zakat, right? And paying it. So this date, so say you choose this date of 21st of Ramadan. So every year on the 21st of Ramadan, that 21st of Ramadan represents like the last day of your Islamic financial year almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you live for a year, you earn, you spend, you do what you have to do. This is your last day. You sit down, you make an assessment. Where have I ended up? So what matters is your situation today. You include your various things, which we'll talk about. And you say, okay, fine. Here's what I have. I pay 2.5%. And then I move on to my next year. My next year starts. But you have to have a specific date, because otherwise, one year you're calculating and paying first Ramadan, then you're doing 20th Ramadan, then you're doing 15th Ramadan. Like, you know, you need to have a specific date. Okay, so that's important. And then the next thing to understand is that it's very much in relation to what your circumstances are on that day. So on this day, for example, I have this amount of cash and this amount of whatever I have, that we include. We're not too worried generally about what has happened and what will happen. Okay, it's like, what is my situation today? Mm-hmm. So the main important things to know, you include all of your cash that you have, whatever its source and whatever you intend it for. Yeah. I might have cash I'm saving for this. I think I want to spend some money on that. It doesn't matter. You put all of your cash in. When you're putting your cash, you're dealing with your cash. Then you look at obviously your gold and your silver jewelry. Obviously, there's a difference of opinion in terms of like exactly how this is treated, but you know, you include the jewelry. There's various investments and stuff that you will think about in terms of shares and pensions and all of these types of things. We have detailed on our website and on our calculator all of the specifics around these things. I can go into it, but I'll just doing it high level at the moment. And money that is owed to you, for example, if you have, you know, some foreign currency and other, I don't know, cryptocurrencies, whatever you've got, right? You include the pound equivalent of what you have today. So you can do that. And then you are able to deduct certain things. So you can deduct any money that you owe or any personal loans that you have or any overdue bills, utility bills, right? Or overdue payments. You don't really think about too much about future payments. Ignore future payments. But currently, anything that you have overdue, okay, personal loans, credit cards, overdue utility bills, right, rent arrears or mortgage arrears, for example, these things you would deduct. Then you have a net figure, okay? So you have, well, here's my cash and everything else. I take off this figure, I have a net figure. You compare that figure to the nisab. The nisab currently is around £250 in silver terms, okay? And we recommend the silver nisab as not only a more stable one, but also a bit more of a conservative one. So meaning that if I have £1,000, then I should pay 25 pounds of zakah. Similarly, when we're assessing people who are in need, we use the silver nisab as well. Yeah. Meaning if you come below this level, because obviously now the gold nisab is something like £3,500. So somebody who has anywhere between 250 and £3,500, they're not necessarily at the level of need, that might require zakat. But obviously if you start to go below, if you look at everything that you have and you're below 250 pounds, and obviously you're starting to move into a zone where clearly you might be in difficulty. So yeah, that's what you do, and then you pay the 2.5%, and then you move on.
Excellent. Okay, good. So as you mentioned, it's very important to decide a specific date in the calendar, not just a month, because many people they'll say we'll pay in Ramadan usually.
Yeah.
And that's not usually a specific date, just in Ramadan.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, and then also to, as you said, to make sure that you're financially ready in terms of what you owe, any overdue amount, and so on. Okay, so what else is needed? I mean, in terms of paying the zakat and putting it forward to the right place.
Yeah. So look, I think one, in terms of timing, I think it's important just for people to understand a few things. So number one is that sometimes we need to we can pay zakat in advance, right? So we can pay zakat in advance, but we have to have that specific calculation date. So you can pay it throughout the year, but you should do it in advance of that calculation date. So that's one thing to know. And then obviously when it comes to giving, then well, obviously I'm going to recommend that you give your zakat through National Zakat Foundation, only because of the principles that we adhere to, right? Because it is a zakat organization that's meant for Muslims in this country, and we discussed about the fact that we provide a mechanism through which Muslims can have their zakat affairs managed together, that we do it locally, that we're balancing it across various different needs in the community. And that inshallah, if we were to keep investing in this way in each other year on year, that we could have a really, really significant impact, on our, in our community, inshallah, going forward. So that's really the main things. I would say in terms of the specifics, I would invite people to kind of visit the website. There's lots of information. So National Zakat Foundation is nzf.org.uk. Lots of information there in terms of, there's an online calculator. There's lots of specifics in terms of Q&A. You can submit a question or query as well. Lots of information about the specifics of calculation. So that's something, inshallah, people can benefit from. And lots of case studies as well in terms of what we are.
Do people, when they pay zakat, do they have access to where the zakat has been, how has it been spent? Stuff like that.
Right. So what we're enabling is that when somebody is on our website and they want to give zakat, then we give them a choice about a few things. Okay.
Right.
We say, look, let's say for argument's sake, someone is paying £500 of zakat. Okay. So we will say to them, okay, first and foremost, that are you happy that we use 10% of your zakat to cover the cost of distribution? Yeah,
right.
Because there are costs involved in making all of the assessments and doing the eligibility processes, and obviously a whole team involved in doing that whole thing, and it's for many thousands of people now, so there's a lot of work involved. And so we say, look, obviously, as we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifies or stipulates a category of zakah recipient as being the amilin. So Allah is saying, Allah is saying that some zakah should be used to pay people literally to be full-time zakah workers. And what that teaches us also is that Allah Himself wants this to be an organized, specific function. And so we use some zakah for that purpose.
But you still give them the option, and you still make them aware of what.
So what we say, what we say is that, what we say is that, look, either you say you're giving £500, we say, look, £50 we'll use for what we call support costs, and then £450 will go directly through NZF to the relevant person who is deserving of it. Or you can choose to add £50 voluntary.
Oh, right. Okay. That's a good one.
And then your whole £500, because some people are not comfortable with their zakah being used in that way. So your whole £500 can go through. But what we're saying is, look, you've got to pay for the handling cost of your zakah, basically. Yeah.
Well, it's part of the zakah. So when he's paying for those al-abidina alayha, those who working and helping and making sure that the zakat is reaching the right people, they're already paying zakah. So that £50 when it's paid, when you make them aware of paying it, they automatically also paying zakah.
Yes, but what we're saying is that the default is, you're right. So the default is that the £50 will come from within the zakat.
Right. Yeah.
So most people are okay with that. Some people are not comfortable with that. They prefer all of the zakat to go. They don't want any of it to be used for what they consider to be administrative costs or whatever. Right. Fine. Then in which case we say that's okay. But then we invite you to add £50 extra sadaqah.
Yeah.
Because that enables us to cover the cost, and then your £500 can go straight through, directly through. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing then is that we have three, like I described, the various funds that we have. So then we say to somebody, we have a default recommendation across our three funds, which is hardship relief, housing and work, and then education. Okay. So we have a 70-20-10 default split. Okay. So 70% of your zakah will go to hardship relief, 20% to housing and work, 10% to education.
But you have because of the need of the
roughly in relation to the need that's coming through. However, what we're saying is you can choose, if you want to change those percentages, you can change them.
Right.
So if you want to do all of your zakah you want to be given to housing and work, for example, and nothing else, then you can do that. Or you want it to be split equally across all three. So it's up to you. So then you will get a receipt to confirm that. And then what we are also doing now is that we are tracking the applications that are coming in to these funds and the giving, and then we're basically we've introduced a service, and we're refining and improving it, that then will allow us to tell you, say in 3 months' time, the money that you gave for hardship relief, right, has now been distributed to so-and-so. That you will get a notification to tell you that now your money has gone to so-and-so. There's not with NZF anymore, it's gone, right? Or that the money that you gave for housing and work or education, whatever, that it's now been distributed. So you're getting those notifications to say that, oh, your money has gone to support, you know, for example, you gave £500 and that was £500 of an £800 grant that we gave to a single mother with 3 children living in, you know, wherever, Middlesbrough, or whatever, for example. So then you'll know, okay, wow, that's great. So alhamdulillah, my zakah is gone, it's been distributed. So we make sure that at the most, we make sure that zakah has been distributed within an 11-month cycle at the maximum, right? But on average, it's about 5 months. See, the problem is, Sheikh, that basically, depending on when somebody gives, because we are distributing the money out in the order that it comes in. And as you know, it's extremely concentrated. So it's in the last days of Ramadan, a huge amount of money comes in, So for example, somebody who gives at the beginning of the 27th night, their zakah is probably going to go out a couple of months before somebody who gives at the end of the 27th night. Because we get so much money in that literally 6-7 hour period, right? That constitutes maybe 2 months worth of distribution. Whereas somebody who's given, for example, at the beginning of Ramadan this year, their zakah is likely to go out maybe by, you know, July, probably their zakah will have been distributed. You see? So, but that's how we do it. But we say at the maximum, we make sure that the zakah has not, exactly. So you won't pay your next zakah except that your previous zakah will have been distributed. But the exact timing will depend on when you choose to pay it.
Right. Okay. What about Zakat al-Fitr? I'm sure now you getting ready and people started to pay.
Yeah, they have. So, but what we've started to do this year is that we've started to give Zakat al-Fitr alongside the grants that we're giving in Ramadan.
Right.
So the standard grants that we have, we're topping those up with the zakat, and we're telling people that this is for specifically Zakat al-Fitr for Eid, etc., right? And we're doing that to make our own distribution easier. Usually we distribute in the range of, you know, 10 to 15,000 pounds of Zakat al-Fitr. So it's not a massive amount, but the option is there. I think this year we probably will get more, to be honest. So this year it might be, you know, 20 to 30,000 pounds potentially. But we will distribute, and because of the fact that a lot of people would give through mosques, but now they're not going to do that. So we may get, you know, obviously in the last few days of Ramadan, get a lot more coming through. But we're making sure that we're distributing as much as we can now, and people are already giving now as well. So it will, Insha'Allah, hopefully as much as possible will be done in time before Eid itself.
Excellent, mashallah. One question here: do non-Muslims benefit from the zakah somehow, some way?
Yeah. So as far as poverty is concerned, or the poverty aspect is concerned, then we say that zakat is primarily understood to be for Muslims. So zakat is given by Muslims, received by Muslims. And the reason is everything that we discussed, that the prime function is to preserve the connections between believers and the belief and the faith of those in difficulty as well. Now, in our context, look, the thing is that I think that still has an importance and a relevance in our context as far as zakat specifically is concerned, because Muslims generally are disproportionately in difficulty in this country relative to other groups. And so the fact that we concentrate on supporting the need within our community makes sense. But of course, that doesn't mean that through our sadaqah and our other giving, we shouldn't be supporting in all sorts of different ways, you know, others. But zakat specifically has been understood over the centuries by the majority of scholars to be primarily or exclusively for given by Muslims and received by Muslims.
Because we also had al-mu'allafat qulubuhum,
that's true. So that ta'lif al-qulub or al-mu'allafat al-qulub is obviously a very debated category. What does it mean exactly now? And so many big range of opinions on that. So some say that yes, it can be given in a specific circumstance to somebody who is not Muslim, but where you have a reasonable kind of understanding of a person's situation, that they are someone who is at least warm to Islam or interested in Islam, you know, and this is a way to soften their hearts and incline them further towards Islam. So that is, yeah, but some disagree with that. You know, some agree with that. As NZF, you know, we don't distribute in that particular way.
Right, excellent. Do you have a means for people to do like the calculation, like a Zakat calculator, for example, on your?
Yeah, so online, alhamdulillah, on the website, there is a Zakat calculator and a Q&A bank and lots of resources there in terms of calculation and guides as well. Yeah, so alhamdulillah, everything is there to, you know, and we have the ability for you to ask your questions as well.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, good. Any advice for the Muslim community when it comes to really Zakat and I mean the approach of paying Zakat in the West?
Yeah, sure. Look, my as I said earlier, I think my you know, our strong recommendation and the reason why National Zakat Foundation was founded in the first place was to encourage Muslims to give their zakat together, to give it locally, and to give it in such a way that has a, you know, the most impact for the future of Islam and Muslims in this country. That's something which our responsibility. The people who are worthy of zakat and deserving of zakat in our community, they have a right upon us, and we need to fulfill that right. We need to strengthen ourselves. We need to look to our consider our sort of future here and realize that, you know, spending zakat in this particular way, even though it might feel difficult or it might feel that it's not the best thing to do with your money relative to giving it here and there in other countries, you have to realize it's not just about the individual impact on poverty that you're having, but it's about what we're achieving collectively when we have a network of support within this community and within this country. It's really, really critically important for us to realize the level of priority and that has and responsibility that we have towards it. And then, of course, we can continue to give. There's no reason why, you know, most Muslims in a year will be able to give as much sadaqah as they give in zakah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why not give zakah in this way and then sadaqah do as you wish and give for whatever else that you want to do? So that way you're balancing between different things, but you're not neglecting this. You know, not neglecting this. And the worst case scenario, you know, at least give some zakah. You know, what we find is a lot of people, they might calculate their zakah and then they decide, okay, fine, I'm going to give half here locally and half elsewhere. Okay, fine. But don't neglect local zakat altogether. At least do it to save your own self from, or so that you can have an excuse to say that you were part of the solution to or contributing to the local needs, right? And people in your community, because literally, you know, especially, you know, and it is the case in terms of where the Al-Nagashi masjid is as well. In your community, there are people, you know, who are in difficulty, they are in need. I mean, you know it already.
I think the focus is becoming more on because we see that in many Muslim countries, for example, the need can be food, you know, result of war and the people displaced from their homes and so on. But obviously, not people won't need that in the same way here. I mean, it won't be probably most of the time food, or it can be debt, it can be different ways of hardship that they go through. And I think sometimes, you know, in our subconscious, we compare between the need for food and, you know, food baskets and so on, and people displaced from war. And we don't see that obviously here. And that automatically put certain way of
I understand. No, I understand. But you have to remember that the real need that you're dealing with is the need for those in your midst who have difficulties to know that Muslims are there for them. Because look, the reality is, with National Zakat Foundation, we have, for example, this many thousands of Muslims applying each month for support. Yeah. If Muslims zakat payers don't come forward, then we will literally have to say to them that, like, you know, we will have to say we don't have enough money to help you. But if we say we don't have enough money to help you, what are we actually saying? We're saying Muslims in this country have not given enough to support you.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying, right? And it's not that there isn't enough money. It's like, well, they just haven't been responsible. Yeah. And that's not, you know, that's not something which I just, you know, it's just not acceptable, basically. You know.
Absolutely.
So something that we need to.
How about paying zakat in advance? Do you come across this?
No, you can. You can pay zakat. Yeah, absolutely. You can pay zakat in advance.
Yeah.
When it comes to your calculation date, then you calculate your zakat, and then if there's any left to pay, then you pay the balance. Or if you've paid more already than you need to pay, then you can carry that forward.
Right. And how about anyone where the questions, someone asked about paying zakat, like an installment.
Yeah, so you can do it in installments, but you should do it in advance, not in arrears. So it's better if you calculate your zakah, you should ideally then pay it then, as opposed
to someone whose zakat is due today, and he calculated his zakat, let's say it's £2,000, and can he say, okay, I'm going to pay it to you, but in installment for the next 6 months?
No, so you can do that, but we recommend that you pay as soon as possible. If you really have to do it in that way for some financial reason or what have you, then fine. But the idea is you pay zakat.
I think that has to be a really specific case, because once zakat is due, it should be paid.
Absolutely, no, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes it is the case that the things that we need to pay zakat on, we don't necessarily have the money.
Yeah.
So it might, whether it's like, it might be jewelry, it might be money that we owe, or it might be if it's a business, that's stock, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes there's a cash flow issue. So in those cases, there's it's understandable to a degree that it might be difficult, but then we should plan in advance for that and start to pay in advance, ideally.
Yeah. MashaAllah. Okay, good. So do you with zakat al-fitr, for example, how you give it food, you give it money? How do you?
Yeah, we give it in the form of in the form either of a cash grant or food vouchers. And
food vouchers, okay.
Yeah, because to do it, practically speaking, to do it in terms of actual food items is very, very difficult, and logistically speaking, and also people have more freedom then, or ability to buy what they want to buy, basically, and gives them a bit more dignity in the process as well, I think. So that's what we do. I know there's a variety of opinions on it, but in our context, it's hard to see how you would manage it any other way.
Yeah. End of the day, Islam is to suit every time and every place, and of course there have to be ways of doing what we do according to our Sharia or Islam, but at the same time it has to be practical for the environment, for the society that we live in.
Yeah.
So I think that the food voucher is a way to keep people that give them the right, but with a dignity as well.
Yeah.
And in a very practical way.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, no, that's right. So alhamdulillah, that would be something we'll facilitate. And yeah, that's I think we've covered
JazakAllah Khair. It was excellent, actually. I was checking. It looks like, mashallah, we covered most of it. There was a question here, or just a suggestion that we do workshops to educate people about zakat. I think it's one of the topics that we don't talk a lot about. People just pay it and they don't think too much about it, and that probably brings lots of lack of understanding and awareness of what zakat is, how it affects people, and especially in the West.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Insha'Allah Ta'ala, we'll take that, and in the future maybe we can invite you, Insha'Allah, to our Masjid Al-Nagashi, in Vauxhall here.
Yeah, no, we'd love to.
We can do workshops, Insha'Allah Ta'ala. We'd
love to do so, yeah.
So JazakAllah Khair, Brother Iqbal, for your time. And,
thank you.
For the information. So people also can visit the website of Zakat Foundation.
So it's nzf.org.uk, yeah.
Yeah, MashaAllah.
Thank you for hosting us, and may everyone who's watching or listening have a blessed Ramadan. So I'll remember us in your prayers, and don't forget to give some zakah through National Zakat Foundation, inshallah.
Inshallah. JazakAllah Khair, Barakallah Feek. Thank you very much. We enjoyed this, and we hope to have you again in the future, inshallah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
JazakAllah Khair, Barakallah Feekum. Brothers and sisters, just to remind you, tomorrow, inshallah, we have Sheikh Tawfiq Al-Sair. He's going to be with us, inshallah ta'ala, live at 3 p.m. So, inshallah ta'ala, we want everyone to be ready, spread the news, and we'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow. جزاكم الله خير. تقبل الله منا ومنكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.